The Seattle rain fell not in drops, but in long, slanted streaks, washing the city in a steady gray blur. Skyscrapers wore mist like old coats, and the sidewalks shimmered with reflections of red. Brake lights and dull neon signs. Maxwell Donovan stepped out of his black Tesla, the door closing behind him with a precise hiss. Rain splattered his handmade Italian shoes, but he didn't flinch. He simply adjusted the cuff of his charcoal overcoat and slid his hands into his pockets. To the outside world, Maxwell had mastered life, billionaire before 40, CEO of a tech empire that had reshaped communications. He had the corner penthouse overlooking Puget Sound, a private jet waiting on standby, and a schedule so tightly controlled it could rival the Pentagon. And yet, there was a numbness to it, all a glass wall between him and anything that felt real. His assistant's voice pinged in his earpiece, bright and clipped. "Sir, your meeting with the board is in 30 minutes. I'll be there," Maxwell murmured, already dismissing the alert with a swipe of his fingers. The board could wait. What he needed was coffee, the real kind, from the corner cafe with the bitter drip and scalding dark roast, not the filtered, frothy nonsense they serve in conference rooms. He turned the corner, head bowed against the wind, when something, or rather, the somethings made him stop cold. They were huddled beneath the awning of a closed bookstore, a tattered sign swinging above them in the wind. Two girls, identical, no more than 8 years old. Their raincoats were thin and soaked through, and their copper-colored hair curled wildly in wet tangles around their pale faces. Each girl held a hand out. One clutched a teddy bear missing an eye. The other looked him dead in the face, and the world around him vanished. He couldn't breathe. Those eyes, that impossible amber green, like sunlight through autumn leaves. The same eyes that once belonged to the only person who had ever truly known him, Evelyn Pierce. "Spare change, mister," the girl on the left asked, voice small but steady. Maxwell's lips parted, but no words came. The other girl stepped forward, pressing the stuffed bear tighter to her chest. "It's for our mom," she added. "She's sick. She needs medicine." The sound of her voice was like wind through the tree, soft, but achingly familiar. It carried that same lilt Evelyn used to have when she'd whisper secrets across the lake, when they were just the kids hiding from a world too broken for their dreams. Maxwell crouched down slowly, rain pooling on his shoulders. "What's your name?" he asked, trying to keep his voice from cracking. The girl with the bear looked at her sister, then back at him. "I'm June. That's Leela. June Leela." He swallowed hard, something inside him shifting like a fault line ready to rupture. "Where's your mother?" "She's at the hospital," Leela said. "She doesn't like us begging, but we don't have enough for her pills." Maxwell stared at them, the air thick with the scent of rain and something else, memory. He didn't know what twisted turn of fate had brought these two girls into his path. But the past wasn't just knocking on his door anymore, it was standing in front of him, soaked to the bone and asking for help. The rain intensified, lashing sideways in cold sheets as thunder rolled faintly in the distance. Maxwell's thoughts buzzed louder than the storm, yet his body remained unnaturally still, crouched before the two girls who had shaken the foundation of his world. They didn't flinch under his gaze, they simply waited, small hands out, big eyes wide, soaked to the bone, but unafraid. Leela watched him carefully. Her amber-green eyes narrowed in quiet calculation. June, on the other hand, looked hopeful, almost like she expected magic to happen. He wasn't used to being studied, at least not by people who didn't want something from him beyond money. But these two didn't ask for $1 million investment or a tech patent. They asked for medicine, for their mother. Maxwell blinked rain from his lashes. "Come with me," he said, rising slowly. His voice had regained its usual firmness, but the tremor underneath it was still there, subtle, like a hairline fracture in glass. "We can't," Leela said flatly. "We're not supposed to talk to strangers." June frowned. "But he's not a bad guy. I think he's rich." Maxwell's brow twitched. "That doesn't make me good." "No," Leela agreed, her voice steely. "It just means you can leave faster." The words hit him harder than expected. He looked down, genuinely disarmed. These girls weren't just mirror images of Evelyn. They were her, in strength, in spark, in sadness. "I just want to get you something warm," he said quietly. "Food, a dry place. Then you can decide." Lila's jaw set, her chin lifting like a soldier evaluating risk. June tugged her sleeve. "Please, just for a minute." Maxwell didn't move until both girls nodded. He opened the back seat of the Tesla and gently helped them in. They sat awkwardly, dripping onto the cream leather interior, hugging each other for warmth as the heat kicked on. Their shivering broke his heart. The drive to the diner was silent, but Maxwell stole glances in the rearview mirror. Every time he saw the reflection, it was like a ghost brushing his skin. Evelyn had vanished from his life when they were 17. One moment she was there, sunlight on the dock, promises whispered in the dark, and the next, she was gone. A voicemail from her aunt saying Evelyn had moved away and couldn't be contacted. He'd searched for her, even hired someone years later when the ink wouldn't leave. But she had disappeared like smoke. Until now. At the diner, the girls devoured grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup like they hadn't eaten in days. June chatted between bites. Leila barely spoke. Maxwell watched, studied them, and the tension inside him coiled tighter with every second. He needed answers. "Where's your father?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Leila froze mid-chew. June hesitated, then said, "We never met him. Mom said he was just a summer story, a summer story." The blood drained from Maxwell's face. Evelyn had said that once, about him. They were kids, but their love had been as real as anything. Their last night together had been intimate, fierce. He never forgot it. Leila narrowed her eyes. "Why do you care?" "I knew someone," he said carefully, voice cracking like old vinyl. "A long time ago. She looked just like you." June tilted her head. "Our mom used to be really pretty." "She is pretty," Leila snapped. Maxwell raised a hand. "I didn't mean. She still is. What's her name?" The pause was short, but heavy. "Eva," June answered. "Eva Pierce." He nearly dropped his coffee mug. "Eva Pierce, not Evelyn, but it had to be her." Maxwell leaned forward slowly. "I need to see her." Leila tensed. "You can't. She's in the hospital. She doesn't like visitors. Is she okay?" June's face crumpled. "She's really tired all the time. The nurse said she might not come home." And just like that, the buzzing in Maxwell's head turned into a scream. Something primal. Fear, guilt, hope, regret. He threw down cash and guided the girls gently back to the car, overriding every business alert and message pinging his phone. The only address that mattered now was whatever hospital held the answer to 30 years of silence. As the Tesla pulled away from the diner and into the city's wet gray heart, Maxwell's pulse roared. Eva Pierce, the name sounded like a lie, meant to protect someone from the world. From him. He didn't know what he would say when he saw her. Didn't know what would be worse if she remembered him or if she didn't. But one thing was certain. The past had not just returned. It had children, and they might just be his. The scent of antiseptic hit Maxwell before he even stepped through the sliding doors of St. Agnes Memorial Hospital. It was a cold, sterile smell that clung to skin and memory alike. He hated hospitals, always had, but this time the unease had a sharper edge because he wasn't walking in as a visitor. He was walking into the past. June clutched his hand, still sticky with melted cheese from lunch. Leila walked a few paces behind them, arms folded, chin up, defensive, skeptical, strong. She was watching everything and trusting nothing. "Room 307, the nurse at the desk said, pointing toward the east wing. "She's stable for now, but prepare yourself." Maxwell didn't ask what that meant. He didn't need to. The hallway stretched out before him like a tunnel of ghosts, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Wheelchairs parked haphazardly in corners, patients murmuring behind half-closed doors. Every step echoed with questions he'd buried for nearly 3 decades. Why had she left? Why hadn't she told him? Had she hated him enough to disappear without a trace? When they reached the door, June knocked softly with the back of her knuckles. "Mama," she called. "We brought someone." A rustle of movement came from within, followed by a weary voice, scratchy and low. "Come in, sweetheart." Maxwell's hand hovered on the door handle. His heart thudded against his ribs like a warning drum. Then, without breathing, he pushed the door open. Time slowed. Evelyn. She was thinner than he remembered, almost fragile. Her once vibrant copper hair was dulled and pulled back beneath a hospital scarf, and her skin, though still porcelain pale, was now tinged with the soft gray of a body surrendering. But her eyes, those eyes, they hadn't changed. Still that impossible amber green. Still able to pin him in place with a single glance. She looked at the girls, first smiled. Then she looked at him, and her face went white. Maxwell didn't speak, neither did she. The air between them pulsed with too much silence, too much past. Eve. He breathed. She blinked. I go by Eva now, she said quietly. He took a cautious step forward, as if approaching a wild animal. It's you. I didn't want it to be, she replied. June looked between them, confused. You know each other. Maxwell knelt beside the bed, stunned by how much older she seemed, how much pain lived in the corners of her mouth and eyes. You just left. All those years ago. No note. No goodbye. Evelyn looked away. Because I had nothing left to give you. That wasn't your choice to make. It was, she said, her voice hardening. You were going to Stanford. Your startup had just gotten its first angel investor, and my father had just been arrested for embezzlement. My family was destroyed. I couldn't be the scandal that held you back. Maxwell's fist clenched at his sides. You thought I would have cared about any of that. I knew you would, she whispered. That's why I had to disappear. You loved me too much to leave me behind, and I loved you too much to let you ruin your future on me. The room went silent except for the slow beep of her heart monitor. Maxwell stared at her like she was something holy and cruel all at once. Then, as if the question had finally bubbled to the surface, he asked it. The girls, are they mine? Evelyn's eyes welled up, but she didn't look away. No, the word hit him like a slap. I was already pregnant, she said, her voice trembling. By someone I barely knew. A mistake, a moment of weakness after I left. But when I looked into their eyes, all I saw was you. I named them Leela and June because they reminded me of us. The lake house, the summer we were everything. Maxwell's breath hitched. You should have told me. I should have done a lot of things, she admitted, folding her thin hands in her lap. But I didn't know I was dying until a few months ago. And by then, I couldn't think about what I'd lost. I could only think about what I'd leave behind. Leela spoke suddenly, her voice breaking. Mama, are you going to get better? Evelyn blinked back tears. I don't know, baby. Maxwell reached across the bed and placed his hand over hers, warm and steady. Then let me try. She looked at him with something deeper than fear, something like surrender. I can afford treatment, private care, anything you need. Evelyn stared at him for a long moment, and something in her expression softened. I don't need saving, Max, she whispered. But they might. For the first time in a decade, Maxwell Donovan postponed everything. The board meeting was canceled. His phone remained off, face down on a hotel nightstand. The skyline view from his penthouse meant nothing now. All that mattered was the dim-lit hospital room where Evelyn Pierce, Eva, lay suspended between fading breaths and unfinished truths. He hadn't left the hospital. Not really. When the nurses suggested he return home, he pretended to consider it. But Maxwell knew. He had already crossed the invisible line between the man he was and the man he had to become. And in the middle of that fault line stood Leela and June. They had spent the night sleeping in a pair of chairs just outside room 307, curled up together beneath Maxwell's coat. He hadn't had the heart to move them. Leela woke first, her hand instantly reaching for June. When she saw him still sitting across from them, coffee in hand, eyes bleary but steady, she narrowed her gaze, like she was still trying to figure out if he was real or just the next person who would leave. You slept here, she asked bluntly. I did, Maxwell replied. Someone had to watch your bear. He handed the stuffed animal, still missing one eye, to June, who had just begun to stir. She yawned, then smiled in sleepy surprise. You stayed. I said I would. Leila stood and crossed her arms. People say a lot of things. Most don't mean them. Maxwell didn't flinch. I'm not most people. Silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Until June, in her infinite 8-year-old wisdom, broke it with something that felt like fate. Can we go to your house? Maxwell hesitated, not because he didn't want to say yes, but because it meant more than just shelter. It meant intimacy, responsibility, memory. But June's hopeful eyes melted any resistance he had left. Only if Leela says it's okay. June looked at her sister. Lila's arms tightened for a moment, then dropped, just for a little while. She muttered, we have to come back for Mom. Of course, Maxwell said. The ride to the penthouse was quiet, except for the soft hum of tires and the girls whispering in the back seat. The contrast was stark, from cold hospital corridors to a high-rise sanctuary dripping with wealth, towering windows, marble floors, designer everything. But as they stepped inside, Maxwell saw something he hadn't expected in his own home: loneliness. Every surface was polished, every painting perfectly placed, but it was empty, soulless. A fortress built by a man trying to outrun his own heart. June darted to the window, fascinated by the sea of lights below. It's like we're in the sky, Layla, cautious as ever, examined the room like it might disappear if she blinked. She didn't say a word, not until she spotted a framed photo on the bookshelf. A grainy old picture of a teenage Maxwell and a red-headed girl smiling on a dock. She picked it up slowly. Is this my mom? Maxwell turned from the kitchen, where he was making tea, something Evelyn once loved. Yes, we were 17, summer before everything changed. Lila stared at it for a long time. You loved her. I did. She didn't ask the next question, the one weighing heavier than all the others. Maxwell said it for her. I don't know what happens next, but if your mom lets me, I'd like to help. Lila looked down, her voice suddenly quieter than he'd ever heard it. We don't need help. We just need not to be alone. Maxwell felt that sentence bury itself somewhere deep in his ribs. That night, while the girls slept in the guest room, tucked in with sheets they picked themselves, a galaxy projector painting constellations across the ceiling, Maxwell stood in his study, staring at a wall of digital monitors, blinking with notifications he hadn't checked. But one file sat open on his laptop. Not work. Evelyn Pierce, last known records. He dug deeper than he admitted. There were gaps, periods of her life erased. No job history, no paper trail, nothing for nearly 5 years. Then, suddenly she appeared again in a small town under the name Eva. It didn't add up. Something, or someone, had hidden her, or she had hidden herself. Maxwell opened a second file. He stared at the girl's hospital registration documents. No father listed. No emergency contact except Evelyn. But something out caught his eye. An old sealed court record filed under Evelyn's name. Dated a year before the girls were born. Family protection order. He leaned forward, pulse spiking. It wasn't about him. It was about someone else. Someone she was running from. Someone who might not be gone. A knock broke his focus. Leela stood at the doorway, clutching the photo she hadn't put down all day. If you lie to us, she said softly, I'll know. Maxwell met her eyes, Evelyn's eyes. I promise. He said, no more lies. But even as the words left his mouth, the image of that sealed file burned in his mind like a warning. He wasn't the only one looking for Evelyn, and if he didn't move fast, someone else might come for the girls. Building sandcastles morning came quietly, the city below still shaking off its rain-soaked dreams. Inside Maxwell's penthouse, everything felt softer. The girls had spent their first night in warmth, in safety, in silence without sirens or whispering nurses behind thin curtains. But Maxwell hadn't slept. He sat in the armchair in the corner of the living room, staring into the skyline as the first threads of sunlight unraveled the darkness. He'd been reading Evelyn's letter again, the one she had given him after their late-night conversation in the hospital. Folded in half, her handwriting was jagged from pain, but unmistakably hers. If you're reading this, it means you stayed. Thank you, for them. I know they'll see what I saw in you, but I need you to understand something else. They've seen things no child should. There are pieces I couldn't protect them from, especially Leela. If she flinches when someone raises their voice, it's not your fault. It's mine. There are people out there who still see me as a mistake they didn't get to finish cleaning up. Please don't let them be next. He hadn't understood it fully at first, but now he did, and it chilled him. Maxwell tucked the letter away as the sound of giggling echoed down the hallway. June ran in, barefoot, dragging a long strand of tinfoil behind her like a cape. I'm inventing something, she declared proudly, a robot dog that guards dreams. Leela followed behind, slower, eyes moving from window to door to him. Do you have locks? Good ones. I do. Maxwell said gently. Security system too? Leela didn't smile. We had one before. It didn't matter. June ignored the comment, pulling Maxwell into the kitchen and insisting he teach her how to make pancakes like rich people do. He obliged, laughing for the first time in what felt like a century. She was brilliant, curious, fearless. Every time she smiled, it made him wonder what kind of woman she would become if the world stopped hurting her. But Leela was different. He found her later sitting alone in his study, staring at the monitors. One screen displayed a rotating 3D model of a startup product he'd abandoned years ago, a voice pattern recognition tool with embedded threat detection capabilities. What's that do? She asked, now looking at him. It listens for danger. He replied honestly. It can tell if someone's voice is angry or lying or scared. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Can it tell when someone's about to hurt you? Maxwell's throat dried. Sometimes. She turned to him fully. Then you should use it when Mom wakes up, because she's still scared, even now. Later that day, Maxwell took the girls to a beach just outside Seattle. He needed to get them out of the concrete, let them breathe, let them pretend. June raced ahead, squealing as waves soaked her boots, and started building a sandcastle with seashell turrets. Lila sat next to Maxwell on a bench, watching her sister with arms folded. She always acts like it's okay, Lila said after a while, even when it's not. That's not a bad thing, Maxwell said. It means she still hopes. Lila didn't respond for a long moment. Then, what if someone finds us? What if they try to take us away again? Maxwell turned sharply. Again, she froze, instantly realizing she'd said too much. Lila, he said, kneeling so his eyes met hers. Who tried to take you? She looked toward the water, then whispered. He said he was our uncle. He wasn't. He came to the shelter once, told Mom he knew where she was hiding, said we belonged to him. Mom locked us in the laundry room and called the nurse. He left, but she was never the same after that. Maxwell's chest filled with cold fire. That court record, the family protection order. It wasn't some bureaucratic ghost. It was real. Someone dangerous knew where they had been, which meant they might know where they were now. He wrapped an arm around her. Careful not to make it feel like a trap. He'll never touch either of you. I promise. You don't know that, she whispered. He looked back toward the car. Where his phone was ringing on the dashboard, he ignored it. But later, when the girls were asleep in the car on the way back, he finally checked. One missed call. A known number. One voicemail. 13 seconds long. Maxwell listened with growing dread. You think changing your name changes your past? You think hiding behind money makes you untouchable? She belongs to us, Donovan. She always did, and what's hers is ours. The voice was untraceable, but the threat was real. Maxwell's grip on the steering wheel tightened. Someone was watching. Someone who wanted Evelyn, and someone who now knew where her daughters were. He looked in the rearview mirror. June clutched her bear in her sleep. Lila's head rested against the window, her face twitching in uneasy dreams. The sandcastles were already washing away, and this time, Maxwell knew if he didn't build a fortress around them fast, someone was coming to tear them down. The unspoken truth rain had returned, heavier now, angry, urgent. As though the sky itself was trying to warn them, Maxwell stood at the window of room 307, staring through the glass as lightning forked across the clouds over Puget Sound. Evelyn's breathing had changed, shallower, slower, a rasp beneath the beeping of machines that only seemed to mock the fragility of her remaining time. He hadn't left her side in 3 days. The girls were safe at the penthouse with a round-the-clock security team and a private nanny. Every door, every window, every access point monitored, but Maxwell's thoughts never left them. Lila's quiet panic, June's stubborn smile, their resilience, their fear, their mother. He looked down at Evelyn, now Eva, to the world she'd hidden in. To him, she would always be Evelyn. Her once lustrous copper hair had dulled to ash, her cheeks sunken beneath translucent skin. But even in this moment, she carried something untouchable, a gravity, a final kind of grace. She stirred. He leaned forward. I'm here. She opened her eyes barely. You stayed. I told you I would. A ghost of a smile. Still so stubborn. You taught me that. A silence stretched between them, filled with all the things they had no time left to say. I have to tell you something, she whispered, eyes flicking toward the window. Something I never told anyone. Maxwell moved closer, his breath caught in his chest. It wasn't just shame, she said. Not why I disappeared. He nodded. I know. The protection order. Her lips parted slightly, surprised. You found it. I did. Her eyes closed for a long moment. He wasn't their father. The man who came after. The one I ran from. Maxwell froze. What? I was already pregnant when I met him. He knew. Didn't care. At first. He was kind. I was 20. Alone. Broke. Terrified. He offered help. Shelter. He said he'd raise them like his own. Maxwell's fist clenched. Then he changed. She continued. He controlled everything. My phone, my friends. He made me lie to the girls. Told them he was uncle. But he hurt me. Not them, never them. But I knew it was only a matter of time. Tears slid silently down her cheeks. I ran, took them in the middle of the night, changed my name, changed everything, and I kept running until I found somewhere no one asked questions. Maxwell couldn't speak. I didn't tell you, she whispered, because I didn't want you to know how far I'd fallen. I didn't want you to carry that pain. But I think they always knew they weren't safe. Lila especially, she remembers more than she should. Maxwell stood, walked to the window, and ran a hand through his hair. You should have told me, he said softly. I could have protected you, all of you. She smiled. You're doing it now. A long silence. Then she said, they think you're their father. Maxwell turned. She looked at him with something close to apology. I didn't say it, but I didn't correct them either. I wanted them to believe in someone better than the world they came from. He knelt beside her again, holding her fragile, handed both of his. I don't care about blood, Evelyn, he said, voice shaking. I love them. That's enough. She exhaled, the kind of exhale that meant surrender. Her hand tightened around his just once, before loosening. Then tell them that, she whispered, and don't wait. The monitors beeped steadily for another minute, then began to slow down. Maxwell stood frozen, holding her hand as if he could will it to stay warm. But Evelyn was fading like a tide retreating from the shore, leaving only footprints and salt. Her eyes flicked to his one final time. Thank you, she mouthed. Then she was gone. Maxwell sat in silence for what felt like hours. No tears, not yet. Just the unbearable weight of presence turned absence. The woman he had loved all his life found and lost again when he finally stood. The nurse entered quietly, tears in her eyes. We'll give you a moment, she said. Maxwell nodded. But as she turned to go, a different nurse rushed in behind her, breathless. Mr. Donovan, she said, panic in her voice. There's something you need to see. Maxwell followed her into the hallway. She handed him a clipboard, her hand shaking slightly. We had a background check run on the emergency contact that someone added to her chart 2 weeks ago. It flagged something, but he never showed up, so we didn't think. Maxwell took the paper. Name, Gerald Knox, alias Gabriel King, formerly Gregory Kane. The name meant nothing, but the mugshot clipped to the bottom made Maxwell's stomach turn. Cold eyes, crooked, smile, familiar. He had seen this man before, at the shelter, in security footage, watching the girls. He's listed as uncle, the nurse said, but he's not related. He's a known trafficker, domestic abuse, coercion, multiple warrants. We think he forged the listing. Maxwell's blood turned to ice. And then his phone vibrated. A photo, June and Leela, standing at a crosswalk. Caption, still think you can keep them, no number, no trace. He was no longer just racing against grief. He was racing against a man who didn't lose. The heirloom of the Heart City blurred past in streaks of neon and shadow, as Maxwell gripped the wheel with white-knuckled fury, weaving through traffic like a man possessed. The photo still sat open on the screen of his phone beside him. Leila and June at a crosswalk, a bus looming behind them, unaware they'd been marked. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. He had them, or would soon. He cursed under his breath. Every instinct, every business deal, every billion-dollar negotiation, none of it mattered now. None of it prepared him for this. He wasn't fighting for profit or power anymore. He was fighting for them. The girls were supposed to be home, surrounded by armed security. But Gerald Knox, or Gregory Kane, or whatever name the monster wore now, was cunning. Evelyn had said it herself. He doesn't come through doors. He seeps through the cracks. And Maxwell had left a crack open. He called the penthouse. No answer. The security firm's direct line went straight to voicemail. Then, finally, a single call rang through. The nanny, sobbing, whispering from a dark place. I'm sorry. He knew the code. Said he was family. Leila went with him willingly. Said he was her real dad. June tried to scream, but she didn't finish the sentence. Maxwell's mind burned. That monster had twisted Evelyn's silence into a lie, had planted doubt in Lila's most vulnerable place, had pretended to be what she feared, her father. As she believed him, Maxwell didn't care how many laws he had to break. He'd tear the world down to get them back. He rerouted toward the last GPS ping for June's smartwatch, a location tagged at the edge of the city, near the old dockyards, abandoned warehouses, blind spots, no cameras, perfect for ghosts. As he drove, his mind slipped back to Evelyn's last smile. To the words she never got to say. To the girls, barefoot in his home, asking about pancakes and planets and locks on the doors. He would not lose them. He pulled into the docks and killed the headlights. Wind howled off the sound. Rusted chains clanged against hollow metal, and somewhere in the dark, a child screamed. Maxwell ran. The scream came again, higher, shriller. June. He burst through the corroded steel door of an old shipping warehouse and froze at the scene. Leela stood between June and Knox. She was shaking, eyes glassy, caught in a web of lies. Knox's hand rested on her shoulder with the confidence of someone who believed he had already won. But there was a flicker of something wild in Lila's eyes. Doubt, fear, fire. You don't belong here, Knox said calmly, eyes fixed on Maxwell. You don't get to steal what's mine. Maxwell took a slow step forward, every word deliberate. They were never yours. She is, Knox hissed, fingers digging into Lila's shoulder. She was mine the moment her mother let me in. I fed her, clothed her, protected her from the world. You abused her, Maxwell growled. You made her afraid of her own name. Knox laughed, low and broken, and yet she came back, didn't she? Lila flinched, her eyes darting between them. Maxwell dropped to his knees. Lila, you don't owe him anything. You don't belong to anyone. Not to me, not to him. You're not what happened to your mom. You're who she saved. Tears began to form in her eyes, but she didn't move. I'm not your real dad, Maxwell said, but I will love you like I am until the day I die. That's the only promise I've ever made that I need to keep. Something cracked in her. A single, shattered breath. She turned, fast, and bit Knox's hand, hard. He howled and swung wildly. Maxwell lunged. The impact was brutal. Fists, knees, years of pain behind every blow. Knox was a monster, but Maxwell was desperate, fueled by grief and purpose and the faces of two little girls who deserved better. By the time the sirens arrived, Knox was unconscious. Leela sat on the floor holding June, who trembled in her lap, but was safe. Alive. Maxwell stood there, panting, fists bruised and bloodied, eyes fixed on the girls like a man who had crawled back from hell. The next hours blurred, police reports, medical checks, questions he barely answered, but the girls never left his side. 2 months later, the funeral was small, private, just Maxwell, the girls, and a few nurses from the hospital. Evelyn's ashes were scattered at the lake where she and Maxwell once promised the world would be theirs. After the service, Leela handed Maxwell a letter. One Evelyn had written just for him. Max, if you're reading this, it means you did more than I ever hoped. You stayed. You saved them, but I need you to know one more thing. I lied again. About their father. June isn't yours. But Leela is. I only learned the truth after she was born, and by then, you were already gone. I was too ashamed to ever tell you, but now, you deserve to know. She's yours, and she's watching. Be the man I loved, Max, because she already does. Maxwell's hands trembled. He looked up. Leela stood watching him from the edge of the dock, the wind tossing her copper hair into her eyes, Evelyn's eyes. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. He walked over, pulled her close, and for the first time since Evelyn vanished all those years ago, Maxwell Donovan felt something unshakable. Home. Not a place, not a penthouse or a company, but two girls with fire in their blood, and a woman who'd given everything to keep them whole. He would rebuild his world around them, brick by brick. Heart by heart. The end.